See me the other day with that ball cap.
We're ready. You gonna hit the,
I'm doing good.
all right. No, she's got to turn it. Let's call the meeting to order for the Utility Advisory Committee. If you would, please call the roll.
Mr. Dial?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Here.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Jefferson?
Here.
Mr. Kraus?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Sampson?
Here.
Mr. Crabtree?
Here.
All right, we had our minutes sent out for the October 27th meeting. If I could get a motion to accept those.
So.
All right, have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Motion carries. Approval of today's agenda. If I get a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All right. We got a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, persons wishing to address the committee. Do we have anyone signed up to address the committee? Okay, Mr. Zuber, come on up.
Great. Well, I appreciate everybody's hard work. It's exciting to be into another year, and just wanted to compliment everybody getting the pipe laid out and some stuff going on the 47 project. We're hopeful that we're holding that schedule originally as projected, because we've got some interest in some things going on in the back burner right now. So kind of hopeful that that project is on track. Another thing I kind of want to pose is kind of a question, and maybe it's a mission on some of the other, and there's been, when we're talking about water capacity, there's been a lot of reuse conversation, and I don't pretend to understand how all of it works, but is there any way that developers or people that are doing projects in the county can start looking at ways to accommodate reusing city water that's been cleaned up, that complies with some of the state's requirements, to try to see these cities reusing water in a way that ups their volume of capacity and some of that kind of a team play, if you will. I don't understand completely what it takes. Obviously, it's been cleaned up and needs to be distributed back, but maybe those are a whole new set of lines. But there's been a number of times where it's come up to our view, well, what if there was a reuse option available in this project or in this location? So I guess we're just kind of engaging conversation if there's anything we can do to help them participate, whether it's down at 47 with that development or some of the other things we've done. We're already using utilities out at the preserve, for example, off of 252B. So just posing that as a question that needs an answer, and just as an opportunity, in some way we can help the city and the county. So that's all I had.
You want to comment on that?
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Zuber, down at 4775, if we were going to try to do any kind of reuse, as far as the city, what we have laid in the ground right now, that would be one of the better areas to try it. And for that to happen, the developers would have to go ahead and lay the facilities like, what we call the purple pipe for reclaim to use for their sprinkler systems and things like that. Because we do have a reclaim line that runs there a little bit north of 4775 there to the hayfields, what we call there for Mr. Tice's Farms. We do have a reclaim line there. That is an option in the future as far as the developers and all that we could look at tying into that system once we get our system back up and functioning, to where we could supply reuse to that area.
In the case of our development, there may be opportunity where maybe it's not connected now, but if we knew there was
Yes.
a master plan that you would find beneficial to tie in for both parties, just keeping on that conversation now versus having to dig up the ground from scratch later. That's kind of why we want to have conversations.
Sure. Makes sense to me. Very good. Anyone else? All right, moving on, the old business, the discussion about our ongoing projects. I know Jamie Bell couldn't be with us today, so I think Paul's going to fill in for her.
Yeah, but I won't be near as long-winded as Jamie. As far as our regular projects, your project update sheets in the back as far as 47, 75 and all the rest of them. The ones I will touch on are the ones that Jones Edmond is working on outside of our regular projects. As far as the alternative water supply study, this should have already been completed. We had another meeting with Swanee River back in December. We provided them continued comments and concerns, and we've addressed all the concerns that they've had. They keep having concerns about the offsets that they're being proposed, wanting us to use different data, and this was the case back in December. But we're readdressing the comments and the concerns that they had in December, and Jones Evans is looking at running the different aspects of the models again to resubmit that to see if we can make them anywhere near happy with some of the data that we're submitting to them. But they have basically everything that we have turned in, or Jones Evans has turned in, they've had concerns with and sent us back to the table to readdress it, and Jones Evans are addressing those concerns at this time. As far as the joint funding for projects and stuff like that, Bell Street in particular, I know when I spoke to Jamie and I've spoken with Mr. Kraus, but Jamie and them, I think they're kind of waiting for some kind of MOU based on how the 1.5 million is going to be distributed, how we're going to work that as far as if the city is going to go ahead and negotiate or do the work for the county, however that, MOU gets worked out between the city and the county. That's what we're still waiting on that. Basically, on the other one for the water line and for the one for the Bell, our council did approve for Jones Evans to move forward with the engineering for those two projects, the water line at the mega industrial park, and also all the upgrades of things for Bell Street down to St. Margaret's for the sewer. We're kind of waiting on right now for them to get the notice to proceed, which was something that will probably come up before back to our council again as far as the funding for those two engineering projects. That will probably come up within the next, I would assume, if not this next coming council meeting, the council meeting after, to address those funding issues, where they're going to come from. The master plan, that had been on hold for a couple of months because what we wanted to do, we want to run the master plan as far as the sewer for our two plants during the wettest time of the year. That gives us the best results on where we're getting our I&I and what our actual inflows and stuff are. But we are back on working on it now, but it was, like I said, put off for a little while based on that. And basically also between the different changes in city management and the leadership, it's been kind of not the smoothest of transitions and operations as far as getting input and stuff on this. But we did put it on hold, but it is back up and running now, getting the information on. As far as that, as far as the projects and stuff, that's basically the updates for them, other than the ones that are in your packet with the up everyday projects that we have ongoing. So if there's any questions on those, I can answer those as well.
One question Mr. Zubert asked about the 47 project. I know there was a very short delay, but we're still on pace on that. Is that correct?
Yes, we're not really behind on it. It was just kind of a short delay during the holidays, which everything slows down during the holidays. We had to go back with DOT a few times based on the area where we were going to put the bores, and basically getting some acquisition to a landowner to be able to stretch out pipe and fuse it together to go under 75. All those issues have been resolved, and they're moving forward with that. But there really was technically no delay in the project.
Okay, and with the North Florida Mega Industrial Park water lines, I mean, we're pretty much, you said that'll be coming back for funding to the city council either the next meeting or the meeting after.
I would probably say the first meeting in February, I would assume that would come back before the council.
Now, I know one item too, I know the county got approved for the water use permit, the 2.1 million gallons. And I know there's been some discussion with Swanee River Water Management about possibly pumping the water from our well field to that system, which could be a good cost savings for the county as well. And they were agreeable to that. Is that how you would think the discussion went as far as like Swanee River Water Management?
Yes, sir. Based on what information I have on it. They seem to be somewhat agreeable to it from what I was told. I know there would be quite a few, legal and other permitting aspects to work out, but I think it's something that could be achieved.
Would that streamline the process? 'Cause I know on the other side with the new well field that the county's looking at, would they be able to access our DEP permit for their water use permit from our well field?
That would be something we'd have to talk to DEP about, because DEP, they're real picky on their permits and what happens to these plants and the vines and stuff. I don't think it would be a major hurdle, but it would definitely be something that DEP would have to be brought in on and made abreast of before we made any decisions. Because the last thing we want to do is affect our permits.
That's right. But I think if we have the ability to do it there, because the 2 million is just the beginning, they're gonna need a lot more water there than 2 million. I think the other thing is talking about the alternative water use. I know we've started talking to Swanee River Water Management about a possible other well field outside of the, or in the upper Swanee, I believe. And I think that's one thing we can work together and try and get that thing, moving along, because if we could do that up there on the north side near the forest and have a way to hook it back to the system, I think there's a lot more usage available there than what we're going to get in that Itchtuckney Basin.
Yes, sir. And on the meeting we had with DEP, with Swanee River in December, I did bring that up. It was brought up to Swanee River that that's what we were looking at doing, in that area, was to eventually have a, water treatment plant in that area. So they are aware that that's what we're looking at doing.
And that way, it might even make it easier long-term if we work out some kind of deal with the 2.1 million gallons. It might also be able to turn the switch to move that a little quicker to a higher number if we can add that other well field. And I know that Paul and David have been working, and Mike before was working about a possibility of how we could do that and make it work out. I don't know how far y'all been in the discussions, with your board or.
I think they're just hearing about it right now.
Is that,
Okay.
Now, Paul, as far as the hurdles, if you want to call it DEP, regardless whether or not it comes to attrition or not, could you go forward right now and get the talk started with DEP? I mean, city and county, that's something we need to kind of move forward. There ain't no sense of waiting on a project, because it seems like regardless, if that's even a possibility, DEP is going to have to be involved in.
Yeah, and if that's the wish of, the board, I can go ahead and have Mike reach out to DEP, because the permit's under his water plant, and see what, if any, restrictions they are and what needs to be worked out ahead of time, if that's what you all want to do.
I think that'd just be a positive move, towards the possibility of it coming to.
my question is what kind of partnership are we looking at forming here?
On the, you mean on the
With
$2
city
million,
and county?
2 million gallon thing, I mean.
All of it. We're talking about a new water plant up north. We're talking about pumping 2.1 million gallons from the city wells. My question is, what does the county get out of this?
Where the conversation is right now, this is actually a good time to start this. It would be more like a strategic planning effort. We have recognized, the city and the county, Mike Williams, Paul, myself, that at some point, for continued growth of the city, we're going to need water from someplace other than the lower Swanee, other than the Itchituckney. Probably upper Swanee would be our best option. And that there are options up there that would eventually tie into the Bell Road infrastructure. It's literally just a conceptual concept at this point, but there's a lot of positives to it. And it's probably something this committee could discuss if they want to pursue developing those plans. It would be a joint plan, but exactly how that's worked out, we don't know. In terms of the other, we've had frank discussions with the city that we're going to look at all the options now that we have the county has a consumptive use permit, to best implement that permit, whether that's putting in well fields, whether that's working with the city to use the existing city well fields. We approached the city to say, is that an option we could consider? The city was very much amenable to that, so we did have a preliminary conversation with the Water Management District. But as Paul said, there's still a lot of details to be worked out in terms of coming up with a contract. But at some point, I think you're right. We've got to figure out from this committee what type of relationship, what type of a structure do we want moving forward? How do you want to structure it?
And I think it could be quite flexible. A lot of it could depend. I know some of the initial things I talked to Mike about, and I think Mike and David spoke about it was, it could be as easy as, if we, we're pretty much ready on the engineering of the lines to start laying them. It could be as easy as, you guys pump it there, have a way to switch it. So you have your 2.1 million gallons and then pump it through the lines, and maybe we just would charge the cost of the water. It could be that easy where it's still your customers, or it could be whatever detailed level it could be. I mean, it's all flexible. I think this is just the very initial discussion of it, really.
Well, here's my thoughts on it. I've been pushing this agenda for 3 years of getting the county in the position to provide utilities for economic development. We've come to the city, we've asked for stuff. I mean, it's hard for us to even get an answer from the city on what utilities are available when we have people coming in here. We've been on the same chapter for utilities for 30 years, the county and the city. I think it's time we write a new chapter. If we're gonna join up, let's join up. Let's start talking about a regional utility, and let's start talking about what's best for the citizens of Columbia County as a whole. Because we're gonna be right back in the same boat in 3 years from now, where there's gonna be a dispute if there's not. I mean, I'm just saying, we've got a permit to pump water. I can tell you right now, I'm not gonna put the city in control of pumping water for the county without some kind of control on how that water gets to the county. I'm not gonna be dictated by the city council.
And I don't think that's what anybody's asked for or requested in the discussions.
That's the way the conversation's been going for the last 3 years.
David, has that been the conversation?
I think you're
This
talking
time? Because I don't know 3 years ago. I can only tell you since we started this committee.
I think you two are talking two different things.
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
Because as long as I've been on the council, there's been no dictation, and the city wants to grow and the city wants to help provide utilities. And I think it's flexible. I know in the discussions I've had with Mr. Dial, I think sometimes the open communication helps. So having a communication of what's possible and available is a good starting point. As easy as Monday morning in the meeting between the building department and just seeing, sometimes when things are in the county, but it's city utilities, in the past, we hadn't got that information. But I think now we're working forward to get it. I think we're actually working better than we've worked in the past. As far as like saying that it's a dictation of what would happen, that's not at all acceptable. So what my thoughts would be, depending on what the framework or structure would be, if you choose to do that, it'd be as easy as an agreement saying you have your 2.1 million available when you need it as you need it. I think that's as easy as it could be. I don't think there's any dictation of the amount now, the flexibility of how you want to build the structure. It's all flexible. I'm not saying long-term regional utility wouldn't make sense. I don't know that you start off and say, this is the way you go. I think you see where you can work together first and build it that way. Because if you start working together, then you have a basis to work together more and more as you go forward.
well, I thought we've been working together for the last 3 years.
I haven't been here for 3 years.
Well, I have, and I've made every effort to work with the city for the last 3 years.
I know the lack of ability to move forward has cost people their jobs within the city. I know that for a fact. So I think since the changes we made in June, I think there's been a willingness to move forward and work with you guys and come as an equal partner. I think it's all in the communication of how it happens though, because I know exactly your frustration. I've seen them firsthand. I agree completely with what you're saying about that frustration, but we can't let that hold us back from moving forward. Because two things. One, if there's a way the city could save the county, say $4 to $5 million in development costs on a well field and provide you the same service, and maybe it was treated water instead of raw, as a citizen, I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah,
But at the same time, and I get your point about tying it up, and I don't think it should be tied up.
Todd, in the past, I've looked at some of the agreements presented to the county. They want to provide the water to the county at cost like you're selling it to a customer out there in a residential house.
That's not the
And that's
discussion
unacceptable,
this
you
time.
know. Well, you say that, but I haven't seen anything in writing about that. I'm just saying that's the history that I'm looking at.
And it should all be in writing.
And,
Yeah.
and that's, you know, the only way I see it working is we're equal partners. And we be partners. And to be equal partners, you have to form some kind of utility. Just like we done with Fort White. The city could join with the county in Fort White with a utility, and we could have a countywide utility. You take elected officials out of it, and you do what's best for the utility. Not what's best for the bottom line of the county or the city, but what's best for the citizens of the county, and bringing good paying career jobs to Columbia County for the citizens. I mean, that's the goal. That's my goal. I hope that's y'all's goal.
I think bringing the
And-
jobs here is definitely a goal. Having a GRU here, I don't see that happening. But now if we could create something different, I'd be
There's
for it.
several-
I deal with GRU. I don't want to deal with them here.
And that's that's all I'm asking. Let's sit down
Well,
and start talking about it and see if we can't come up with something
I agree with
that
that.
we both can agree on.
And I agree with that. And I think that's where this conversation started was we started the initiation between Mike and David.
Well, the conversation I heard is basically y'all control the water and we're buying the water from y'all. Yeah.
I think the concept was that we've discussed, is the city, the county would own the consumptive use permit. And if there is the ability to create a contractual agreement, we would be able to use the city's wells and treatment capacity to treat it. But there would have to be a rate structure such that it's just paying for the cost of the treatment, not paying for running lines everywhere across the city, which were problems that occurred in 2006 and historically overall were the rates the city and county could never agree to because the city and county were talking about 25% over in city customer rates, and we're talking about a completely different concept. And the city has been open to at least discussing it. But it's literally just in its infancy.
Well,
It,
I would have to see something in writing for,
definitely.
I mean, cause I can tell you, I worked hard to get where we're at for the last 3 years, and I'm not just willing to step aside and give that up right
And
now.
it's something we're gonna have to work on quickly because,
Yes.
we have a deadline of when we want to be able to provide water in the North Florida Mega Industrial Park.
Well,
And that's by 2023. So it's definitely one of the options we're looking at. We're looking at the other options as well.
well, and I just want to be clear. That's been my goal from the start. And the only way I can see the county accomplish that goal is to be in the utility business, and we're in the utility business. And what I'm asking is for the city to be in there with us. Because we're gonna be in there either way.
Well, the city is already doing the study to put the pipe in the industrial park. We'll actually have our pipe ready and in before the county even comes close to it. So if you remember going back to our first meeting on this committee, I was saying, why couldn't we lay 2 pipes back then, like the very first time? Because to me, what makes financial sense is a sharing of services. And maybe this is the beginning of that step, but we got to have the conversation. I mean, before you get to a written agreement, you have a conversation about it. And so I think we need to be flexible about what's possible, what's available. I think any hard sticking point on any side is not a good way to start to get there, other than the fact that we're going to provide services to the industrial park. And I think that's an agreement we can all come to, that water's going to be there, sewer's going to be there, and gas is going to be there. I think that's the good starting point. From there, we figure out how to accomplish that, because 2.1 million isn't going to go far. Even if we had the whole 4 million plus your 2 million, that's not going to go far. We got to do a lot of bigger things. I know there's plans for that, But if we can move a well field out of that into the upper Swanee, who knows what's available? We might get 10, 15, 18 million gallons. Everything could be on the table.
Mr. Chairman, can I address the timeline? Currently, right now, we have 2 projects under economic development agreements. We're working with 2 other new projects right now, and we're looking at the timeline of what the county's ability is to actually take what they have in place for water and for sewer to be able to build out and meet the timelines for these companies. We don't have a whole lot of time. We're looking at the end of 22, middle of 23 for some of these projects. We are actually having visits next week from companies that are very large users. We know based on what the engineering says that we can get the projects built out and we can meet them under the timelines of what we're seeing right now. So whatever has to happen, either these projects will have to wave them on. We do have a couple of smaller projects that we'll build, but we will have to wave on the much larger projects. I'm talking about projects in excess of $100 to $300 million. So while we do all the talking and while we try to figure all of this out, we have no tools to work with, and we've already had several projects pass through, and we lost a project at the end of last year, a very large project that would have been great for Columbia County and was actually pushed to Columbia County, but we couldn't meet on utilities what the company needed. And it was an issue between city and county. So going forward, however all this is resolved, we're going to continue every day. We worked over 40 projects last year. We worked those projects handicapped because we don't have everything that we need in place. Going forward, we're going to be getting more and more projects because we're getting closer to being absolutely shovel ready. We've got our cup. We've got a waste treatment plant ready to go out. So these things are going to happen. However, all the details in between get worked out, they have to get worked out. But we're working right now. The only thing we can work on right now is what we know. And that's what we can potentially build and have done on the time to meet the timelines for these companies and give them the agreements that they need, or the will serves that they need to know that these projects can be done, because we put our neck on the line to do so. So that's something for consideration to think.
And that's why when we approve or plan to approve the engineering plan for where the water's going, we're ready to move forward on that and put pipe in the ground. So to me, it looks like we're moving that direction.
I will tell you another factor too that's very, very critical is from an industrial standpoint, we've got to begin to start looking very, very hard at rates. If we're going to be competitive nationally and internationally, we'll have to look at the industrial water, sewer, and gas rates to be competitive. So fortunately, a lot of our stuff is built on grants, and that can keep us competitive, but we have to be able to know that. We have to know that up front. We have to do it with confidence. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us. We've got a company coming next week that's needing rates. We're going to have to kind of skirt around that a little bit right now.
Well, what Mr. Ford said, I agree with 100%. And this is a perfect opportunity because I agree. Both sides, and I hate to use that analogy, but city and county government, we've all got to be in agreement that it's working, like Rocky said, for the benefit of the taxpayer, for the future of Columbia County. So I just can't imagine why this board could recommend, and this joint city-county, I'm not talking about 2-3 months down the road, because here we are, Mr. Jefferson is representative, here today, and Todd from the city, me, Rocky from the county, let's get everybody in the same room. And because the regional utilities, I agree with Todd. Are we going to be a GRU? No, but we as a board have talked about it. There's many different options out there. We're sitting in the driver's seat because we can design how we want this utility to be. And for years, as long as I followed government, it's always been the fact. Me and not only Paul, but the previous utility directors, in the past, it seems as though that the city government has used their excess funding for a, go-to when we need money, so to speak, when they got lines in the ground that need repaired to this day, you know, and the monies that were spent on other issues could have been very well spent in the utility division where they're not behind the eight ball like they are now. And, but me personally, David, I'd like to see us get together and just have a roundhouse open meeting and, you know, and let's get some of these kinks out because I agree with Rocky. You know, we can't, and even what Glenn said, you know, we want to move forward and we know there's some of these projects coming down our pipe that is just unrealistic and you ain't gonna be able to, there's not enough money. We don't have enough money to fund it in the timelines that we deal with on some of these economic demands. But, call it regional, call it whatever you want to, but I think we need to get all 10 heads in the same room at the same time and let's hash this out, you know, because I'm like Rocky, he's been working very diligently himself, I know, for the last 3 years and let's put his efforts to work, you know, as well as I know every other board member and, you know, councilman been doing the same thing. But this way, at least everybody's getting it straight up and hash it out right here. And, you know, and I realize, Glenn, the utility rates is a hard thing. I do know in my conversations when I was the chair, you know, that is one of the driving forces. And when these people come knocking on the door, the truth is a lot of the questions that they ask, in my opinion, are unrealistic. Could be they're coming to a rural community. They're not coming to Duval County or stuff like that. They know and we're not the only county doing it, you know. So it's tough. It's tough nut.
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head there with you know, the city's been robbing from the utilities for years.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been putting the money back in the utilities. And really, it would be beneficial to them at this point in the game to join with the city, with the county financially. I mean, it just makes perfect sense because right now your maintenance schedule is behind so far financially, you're never gonna catch up. And we're robbing money from the utilities to pay other bills. And when I brought this up, the first thing I heard from for city council member that's not here anymore was that's 20% of our budget.
Well, I think, yeah, and you can't look at it that way. I
No.
think there's opportunity because there's ways of compensating for any kind of
Well, and that's what I'm
proposal, but
point I was getting to though, Todd. What y'all need to start looking at is annexation. And if you join in a utility and you start spreading this utility out and get this economic development in, there's no reason the county's gonna buck y'all with annexation. And that's your revenue source for long term is annexation.
yeah, I agree with that. And that's one discussion we've been having with the administration too, is annexation is crucial to the future of the city because, you know, the ad valorem's crucial. One, I mean, just having that base and growing the base of the citizens and the populations tremendous. Yeah, I mean, that's crucial. I think now's a good time to start the discussion to see where we want to go. But I think regardless moving forward, we need the line in the ground to the mega industrial park. And I think we're not going to slow down on that. We're going to continue moving forward on it. And just like you guys aren't going to slow down on it. But
I'm not asking you to slow down.
No.
We're not slow down either. But we're asking you, let's sit down and start a discussion on what we can live, we can live with this, you can live with that. Let's come to some kind of agreement and let's join.
no, I think that's where we're at. I think that's where the discussion is. This is a beginning discussion for what we can do, but at the same time, not stopping what we got going on because we have to get there. It could be even the case where you use us for that 2 million gallons just in the interim, because we can have that piped in. How quick, Paul?
Well, we'll get the preliminary, all the engineering in, it'd be based on, you know, once we get the engineering back from Jones Evans when we move forward with it. I have no doubt that it shouldn't take a year to build it.
That's engineering and you already got the engineering.
We've already started that.
Already got a lot of the engineering already done on it. It's basically just getting signed, sealed drawings and everything else and surveys and stuff. if we're gonna stay with the original routes that we were looking at.
And of course, one thing I'll point out, because I just learned this the other night, and I know the city, everybody knows the issues the city been going through, but now, and David, you, in your position, you may be able to answer this question, but is running this line, could that have been a possibility on a, request from the legislature on an appropriations request?
Yes.
Because I know the city hasn't got no appropriations request in, and as well as the county doesn't either this session.
We do.
What's ours on?
It's a roadway.
That's right. That's on the mega site, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. But, I think we missed the ball there, for what, you gotta write it off as everything that we all in this room know has been going on here for the last year or so. But take advantage of that, because as it was spoken the other night, there's a lot of appropriation requests out there that probably a good portion of them is gonna be funded, and there's still gonna be money left over.
I think there's still grant opportunities too. I know Paul's doing a good job at getting us some more funds. I know we're gonna talk about some of the other ones on 47, but there's other opportunities there also.
Yeah.
And I think as we move forward, I think this is a good place to have the conversation, what do we want it to look like in the future? And that's the time to talk about it. So,
So I think it'd be safe to say that appropriations runs a little bit faster than grants, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so just
and
keep it in the
David,
back of your head.
David, do you have anything to add on this? What's your thoughts on all this? Am I off base, or what do you think?
In looking at it, and again, I don't want to speak for the city. I see there's two separate issues in my mind. This is just my mind, not anybody else's. There is the issue of what do we do immediately to get water service in the North Florida Mega Industrial Park by the time the sewer plant opens, which would be the beginning of 2023. So we want to be able to have water in the industrial park by the time the sewer plant opens. And then we now have the consumptive use permit. So now we can start making decisions. How do we move forward? What is in the best interest overall of everybody? And we have to look at all options. One option is working with the city, and hopefully that works. One option, maybe we had to put in a wall field, which would be similar or near where the city is. I think we have to look at those options, but we've got to do that decision-making quickly, because that decision has to be made, I would say sometime by February. So we have time then to design. It's not just a question of, I don't mean to be wordy, and Paul can verify this. It's not just a question of getting water to the park. You have to get water in the park to where the customers are. So there's gonna have to be lines beyond it. And, preliminary, we were always in the past saying, city's gonna provide potable, county's gonna provide industrial. Well, that's a case of then running two water lines adjacent to each other in the same ditch. Does that make sense? Is that financially viable? Or is there a way we can work together and only run one line and everything's potable? And it benefits both the city and the county. That's a discussion we need to have immediately.
So to get it on the agenda in February, some kind of contract needs to be written up in a week.
No, I think we need to go ahead and start talking about the terms, and that would lead to the contract.
Yeah.
When's the the city county joint meeting?
I have no idea.
I don't know if there's one scheduled.
No, what's scheduled?
The other issue,
We had one of them in a year.
the other issue I see is a much longer term strategic issue moving forward, which is like the water plant in the Upper Swanee Basin versus where we're currently at, because we all realize our ability to withdraw water in the current basin is going to become more and more difficult as these MFLs get tighter and these regulations get tighter. So there can be a future development in the Upper Swanee. And Paul and I have had this conversation. It makes a lot of sense, but it would have to be a joint effort. It would have to be thought out. So the longer term is, what type of relationship does the city and county want to have moving forward in the partnership, which is what you were talking about? And that's, what does the city want out of this partnership? What does the county want out of the partnership? Can we reach a level where we're all comfortable with that? Rather than calling it one thing or another, let's at least first identify what each party wants and kind of, I don't want to say mediation, but that type of an approach to figure out what is the relationship moving forward that each side wants for the long-term growth of both Lake City and Columbia County.
But David, here's the fact. We know we're gonna have residential growth.
Yes.
We know we're going to have multifamily growth.
Yes.
So we're gonna be having to provide water and sewer for that in Grant County. And all that's not gonna happen in the incorporated area of the city.
That is correct. Right now, there is a plan on board behind, out on West 90 that is in the county, but is relying on city water.
So that's my point. The sooner we can come to some kind of agreement and get a plan for the city and county to move forward, the better off we're gonna be. And we need to move forward together on this. We need to plan for the future, not let the future just happen. And doing it as a team is a lot better than trying to fight against each other.
I agree with that. I think working together makes the most sense. 54% of our utility for the city's in the county. Is that correct, Paul? Pretty close.
That's probably pretty cool.
Pretty close. And I know we're doing a lot of other projects. We're doing the West 90 project, which he alluded to. So there's a lot of growth opportunity. I think if we could get about 10 to 18 million gallons up there in that basin up there, and it ties back into the main line, now you're talking about 16 million, and we're going to need more than that for the companies Glenn's talking to. So, and then with the normal growth, when jobs are created, more people come. When more people come and hook up, then we need more residential use. I mean, even projects like what we're working on 47, it's going to hit the limit, which is why we're pursuing increasing our permit already, because we know the permit's too short. And the problem is with where we're located. Now, the time we located it there kind of made sense, but it's getting more water in that area is going to be a struggle. It just is. If we go to this other area, I think it's going to give us opportunity.
And I think Paul could tell you, to build a water plant where you're talking about, that's not something that's going to be done tomorrow.
No.
That is going to be a 5 to 10 year project. But if you don't start it, you don't get there.
That's my point, David. We've got to start planning now.
Well, there's a lot of combined
There's a lot of tough decisions going to have to be made in the near future. And, the Board of County Commissioners and the City Council, they're going to have to make these decisions. And they're going to be tough, but they're going to have to make them. So they need to be prepared.
And in working with Paul and Mike Williams, both were very supportive of working together moving forward.
Well, with the decision needing to be made, like Mr. Ford was saying, I mean, is it realistic to say our next scheduled meeting, the city council's next scheduled meeting, get it from the council? What are both sides looking for out of this agreement? And let's get the ball rolling. You ain't got to be so specific on the rates and what have you, but the conversation still got to take place. And does that sound realistic, David, as far as bring this up for discussion at our next meeting or 5:30 meeting, the second meeting of the month?
It can definitely be put on the agenda. I don't want to put the city in a tough spot in terms of, I would defer to Paul in terms of what he thinks. It may be that you want to call for a joint city-county meeting early February, late January, I don't know.
Well, it needs to be a meeting we can vote at. Board of County Commissioners can vote and the City Council can vote.
But that would give at least Paul and I time to work together to try and figure out what it is we're looking at.
Well, I'm in support of trying to do it by the end of January, because I think February is a very crucial time as far as getting it by. And Glenn, these two projects, I know where one's located as far as the geographical area on 90. Is the other one the same area? Okay. So these projects, they're far enough along that we can literally sit in a room and talk about location of the projects, the feasibility of putting, like Dave was saying, the line getting.
We spot these projects on almost every one of them. So all the projects are typically spotted on site.
I guess my question, what is the city's comfort level?
On the,
On what you asked me, timeframes?
As far as setting up the meetings or getting it all,
Setting up meetings, I mean, I think the sooner the better.
Well, setting up the meeting, but we need to have kind of a consensus, you know, at that time too, of what we're looking at.
I mean, I can't speak for Paul, but I think staff's side is, if the board tells us we have to have a meeting on such and such a date, we have to have a meeting on such and such a date. So it really becomes more a political policy level decision than a staff
I
decision.
think on our next agenda for the council, we could have a request for a joint meeting. I think that would be doable.
I think that's the way to start, is with a joint meeting. Both bodies need to sit down together in a joint meeting. We need to hash out some of the issues that we're talking separately, outside the joint meeting. We need to sit down, and I agree with what Commissioner Ford said, Sampson said, and Mr. Murphy said. We need to reduce some of this talk to paperwork, you know, so that we can move forward. I mean, we've been talking about these issues of, you know, for a while in meetings, but we need to narrow it down to what we can do, what we want, and we need to do that together, not separately. Because the goal is to work together, and I think we need to meet together and talk about these issues so that we will all be on the same page, and so that we can all move in the same direction. And I think that needs to start with a jointly in a meeting, and then from there, if we decide to carry something from there to our individual boards for further approval or discussion, but then that's the way I feel that.
Well, and I agree. I think we have proven that we're willing to help the city any way we can when they need help. But we've got to move forward together.
But we need to talk about these issues so,
Yeah.
and say what we want and what we can do and what we can't do. And I see no better way to do that other than sitting down in a meeting with all.
Well, and I can only speak for myself on this committee. Mr. Sampson too, if we got both boards at a meeting, help us be collaborative as a board, we can also. You
but
know,
I agree with you, Rob. It needs to be, we need to be able to take action on both sides. Audrey, when is the next city council meeting?
Well, we're having a-
18th,
18th?
it's a Tuesday,
Somewhere around it.
Tuesday the 18th.
And Rocky, when are we supposed to be over in Tallahassee?
well, that's the second, that was where our meeting was, if we're gonna be over on the third, that which was the day of the meeting. But now we're gonna bring up it Thursday night to move that first meeting in February. I think to that Tuesday, aren't we, David? Is that what we talked about?
Whichever the board wants, we can either.
Yeah, we're gonna move it
or
anyway.
to
We're gonna be in
Tuesday.
Tallahassee that on the third.
You've got the VEDC having, the third, Columbia Day is the third.
Okay, so what do we have scheduled for the 26th, 27th?
Of January,
Yes.
the LTPT committee, broadband committee.
Okay, that's on the
So
26th.
that's just the committee.
20,
Committee, that's a separate committee, right?
Right.
Then again,
25th
I don't have a calendar.
is
well,
25th.
Mr. Commissioner Ford, Wood, of course, he needs to be there. We need that.
But we could work it out that week, because if it's early in the week, and I think it is, you could have a Wednesday, Thursday meeting of the two boards.
It's 25th on the 26th, 27th Rural Summit in this month.
It's the what?
Rural Summit in Tallahassee.
26, 27.
Yes. David, you're scheduled for that?
Yeah. But obviously, this is more important.
Well, what I'm getting at is, we meet on the 19th again, correct? Second and third.
Yeah, we meet on the
So
third.
we meet on, they meet on the 18th. So realistically, it seems as though that to me, but, on the 31st, which is a Monday, because I'm all for stepping this thing up. And I don't think, to my knowledge, on my calendar, I don't see anything conflicting on the 31st.
There's nothing on the 31st.
And, for that joint meeting. Now, do y'all have to go
I
to,
think we'll have to approve it at the next council meeting. We put that on the agenda for the next meeting to propose a joint meeting on the 31st.
and likewise, we can do it on the 19th.
Yeah.
You know. And that way you got plenty of time.
Do you have a time you prefer, normally afternoon, evening,
Definitely afternoon. I'm thinking it needs to be,
6 o'clock?
5:36, whatever, but I think it needs to be in definitely a larger room than this, so, you know, we can work it out over there. With both IT guys, I'm sure they'd set up enough communication.
Yeah, I mean, I can check the school board, make sure it's available. If that's what the
So y'all
city and the
bring
county
on
want.
y'all's agenda for the 18th to meet on the
31st.
31st.
That's gonna be the proposal.
On our agenda, to meet on the
And we can get with Audrey and kind of try and coordinate it, because make sure
Or
that
be next
the
day.
scheduling works.
Well, we can do it after then because our meeting.
Yeah, we gotta have time to advertise, so you got that week's time of the advertise, that's
We need to vote on that
Be-
at the next meeting.
next meeting.
We beat that horse slow.
Chairman?
Let's move on.
It's like,
Do we have the
Audrey?
topics for the meeting? We will need to notice also the topics that will be discussed at the meeting. So do we have the topics that we're going to talk about?
when would you need the topics for by?
At least a week before.
So if the elected officials on this board wanted to submit topics, we could all coordinate that before the next meetings.
It'd be nice if we had it, to present to them at our next meeting.
That would make sense, I think.
Yeah.
So you would need topics this week, basically.
So by the 11th, 10th, by the 10th, next Monday.
Yes.
I said 11th because we're meeting the next Tuesday, so.
My recommendation would be the elected officials on this board just tell us what topics they want. And Paul and I can get together and talk.
That makes sense to me.
We can make it very broad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that needs to be, yeah.
Okay.
I think the broader the better.
Combined services, I mean,
Combined utility,
combined
do it this way, Audrey, just call it combined utility operations. And that's pretty dang broad right there. You can probably take that and tear it up. Stu probably not about it, but that's all right. Is he sleeping back?
Got your back.
Okay, good. I just wanna make sure you're
Got your
sleeping.
back, don't worry.
All right.
What?
He's just rattling.
Okay, where are we at after that? We talked about the water route for the mega industrial park. That's coming to the next council meeting for the engineering. That's item 6. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, we kind of covered all those down to.
I think we have covered the master plan. We covered the project. I think also we were talking about setting this for a set time every third Wednesday at 3. Does that work for everybody? Okay, good. And then, under new business, we wanted to talk about, and maybe this is something we'll wait until after we have that discussion, but utilities at Quill Heights, I know Paul's started some work on that, and, I know we're gonna try and move forward on get some things done there. The natural gas at the mega industrial park, I know that was an item that was added on there.
Yeah, and, Mr. Brown has some information on that if you want him to, address it.
We have been moving forward with gas out of the mega site. We're having to work within our boundaries, obviously. One of the things that we've done is we had a meeting on Veterans Day. Mr. Murphy, Mr. Kraus came in and attended, Mr. Dial and myself. We're entertaining any possibility of getting gas from anybody in the local area. Obviously, Southern Natural is off the table as People's Gas has already subscribed all of their capacity. We've talked about that on multiple occasions. What we have done is reached out to People's, had the meeting. We had their engineers come in and look at what the capacity restraints are, what we can actually get through the pipe. Now, we have not discussed purchasing this gas yet. It's just merely what we can get through the pipe. We know that we can serve 1,200 decatherms a day to that mega site. That mega site at 1,200 decatherms a day, a customer would be the equivalent of the city of Lake City's 2,500 customers. I flow about 1,200 decks a day through our system. One thing about that I think is worth noting, once we do go to negotiations on that gas and we agree to purchase it, at that point, we have to start paying for it that day. Every morning, we have to pay for that gas. So without a customer there, that could get very costly. So what I have done is move toward a right to refuse agreement, which basically what the city will do is we'll pay every morning for the percentage of the gas. The gas in the pipeline will be allotted to us first. If Peoples comes up and they need a customer or have some use for that gas, they basically call the city. They will call our brokers. That's what they would do and say, hey, we've got somebody we can flow this gas to. Do you guys need it today? And they basically call us and say, if you don't need it, we're going to sell it this away. If for the purpose of negotiations, though, for Glenn's purpose, he would be able to say, we have this allotted amount of gas to negotiate on. In comparison, Anderson Columbia, one of our large customers, they burn about 75 therms an hour. That's 100 cubic feet. So you're talking about 50 to 80 decatherms, which is 1,000 cubic feet. So you're talking about a significant customer. We do not have that procured yet. We are in the process of waiting on them. I got an email on Monday that said that they still are waiting on their management team to approve this. So the engineers have confirmed it. It is doable. It is something we can get that quantity of gas, as long as their management team comes back with the approval. Once that happens, then we'll go into negotiation on rates. That is going to be very, very important. As you all know, I buy gas from Florida Gas Transmission, so I'm buying it straight from the source. I'm going to be buying it from Peoples, which is buying it from Southern Natural. So that right there may be a sticking point for us. But it is an option. It is a realistic option. It is a turnkey today, shovel ready. There will be a price for some pipe to be put in the ground from point A to point B, which is where the reg station is now, just west of the prison, to wherever the location is. But you are talking about a pretty significant size customer. In comparison, going back historically, I've done a little research. We had done some feasibility studies over the years. And I'd like to provide y'all with this map if you don't mind. You kind of get an idea what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
So the purpose of this map is to indicate what the city has done. I've got projects dating back since 2017. I believe that first one was called Project MIT. Since then, we've done several studies on getting meter stations together. We've had projects 20-6, 20-9, Caravan, several projects we've addressed about getting capacity to. These customers are asking for quantities in the neighborhood of 160 to 200 decks an hour. These are massive customers. If the city of Lake City and 2,500 customers are burning 80, you're talking about 2 to 3 times that. So to Mr. Murphy's point, you're talking about a lot of infrastructure, a lot of customers that we're going to have to really build to suit. That's also going to come into account that gas that we're going to be accounting for every single day. So having the pipeline and having the contract is something that is probably something we can do more feasible than actually going in, purchasing off the pipeline, locking that amount of gas in every day without a customer. That's going to take a stretch to do that. It is all doable. And I will say this now. This feasibility study was run in 2020. These running lines, 2 of them in particular, the one west of the red line, if you look at the red line that runs north and south, and the red line that runs east and west, the red line at the bottom of the page is Florida Gas Transmission. That's an 800-pound high-pressure line. It will provide all the gas that you need. Any gas you need can come off of that pipeline. The line to the west, or to the east rather, the blue line, that was the first proposed running line to tie on in Ellisville and run up in county right-of-way, all the way up north. This is not, let me make sure, this is not an engineered drawing. We just basically look at path of least resistance. We can run through the county right-of-way. The yellow line, which is option 2, would indicate the 20-inch water main that feeds from the water treatment plant to Kicklighter. That is city-owned easement and or right-of-way. That's doable. That's a feasible line. If you remember in April, I stood right here at this same podium and said, I found a cheaper way to do it. If you tie onto our existing line, which would indicate the entire yellow line, and run to the mega side, that would probably be the cheapest. We have run numbers with these feasibility studies that are somewhere between the $7 to $11 million range. Those numbers come pre this price spike. So those numbers are probably 50 to 100% higher, material wise. So knowing that, we as the city could provide this gas from our contracts that we have with Florida Gas Transmission. The Public Service Commission actually has us in their system. So being the gas provider is a doable thing from the city of Lake City standpoint. Where we were running into the hurdle all the way back in 2017 that has been presented several times through these documents that I have in front of me. I even have one of the original agenda packets from back in April last year where I said the exact same thing, is the funding to actually build the pipe. If you go back to the minutes, there were two comments made. One from Mr. Kraus that said grants can sustain this. One from Mr. Hunter that said these customers are big enough to pay for their own infrastructure. If you look at the agenda update, it says under the gas section every time, you still don't have any funding for the infrastructure. So to pose the question, the city cannot provide it is not a true statement. The question is, how do we get the infrastructure in the ground? And that may be more to your point, Mr. Ford, as far as regional utility or however that would go. I have heard of here recently that the county's going to go in the gas business. That's probably a little harder than you would think it would be. I heard from Florida Gas Utility that Mr. Hunter is going to run a pipeline from Union County. I really don't understand why we would do that. As you can see right here clearly in front of you, it's a gas line and you're right. So why would you buy right away from Union County when you have the right away? Doesn't make any sense. Second, furthermore, if you're going to purchase the property or if you're going to build the infrastructure, it costs the same thing to build it in Columbia County as it does Union County. You're not saving any money. And the city's already in the gas. So I put a couple of those things together to show you that we had already run these feasibility studies. I'll be glad to share any information I've got with you. We use Florida Gas Utility to broker our gas. When we buy gas, we buy 1,500 decks a day. We use 1,500 decks a day. We buy 3,000. What my broker does is sell another 1,500 back down south to FMPA. They buy all my gas that I don't burn. That way my rates stay low. If I bought 3,000 decks a day and burnt 12 of it or 15 of it, I got to pay for that gas. So we're constantly, just like the stock market, brokering that gas up and down these pipelines. So it's very important that when we go out and make these comments, make these decisions, that we think all this through, because there's a lot that weighs into that. It's not like water. Water can stay in that pipe and only cost you the cost to get the well filled in. Water can set there. It costs you a dime. Every morning you're going to buy what you've allotted. So that right there in itself is something that we need to think about when we go, especially these large quantities that carry over a broad span. So as far as the update, we are moving forward. And as soon as I hear, I will send out an email to everybody to lock in the 1,200 decks. And as far as and I believe it's $25,000 y'all are going to spend.
What was that grant, Glenn?
Pardon me?
What was your grant?
The award grant for feasibility studies, 27,000.
Yeah. So the feasibility study should resemble this. I mean, it's path least resistance.
But I would like to make a comment, though. You mentioned that I had a conversation with Florida Gas Utilities. So I would hope that you would bring that person to this meeting next time and have him address, because I've had no conversation with Florida Gas Utilities.
Florida Gas Utility contacted me. I had that conversation.
Okay.
I misspoke on that.
Okay.
The gentleman that you spoke with, or the company that you spoke with, or the firm that you spoke with called them.
Do you know the name of the company that called them?
I can get you the name.
I would very much appreciate it.
I believe you're familiar with it, David. What gentleman in the wheelchair?
Oh, Ron Reagan.
Ron Reagan.
Okay, and so, and please understand something. This is a feasibility study. So what this study is to do is to actually give the county a bird's eye view, their own bird's eye view of exactly what's available to us. County's not committed to anything other than a feasibility study. So what we would like to do is get real numbers on real gas capacities and where they can be connected to or purchased from, and what the process would take, what's involved. We may not be interested in doing that. I can't speak for the county commissioners, But at the end of the day, the fact that we are doing the feasibility study, if the county decided to go forward with that at some point in the future, or if the regional utility, if that's what is chosen to be, we would be in a much better position to be able to secure a grant from Department of Economic Opportunity because we've got a study in place that certifies it. This is the best practical way to do this. This is the most feasible, economical way to do this, and this best fits our economic development projects that we would be putting in Columbia County. So I think that where we stand right now, there's no commitments to anything. It's just an opportunity to go out and take a look at that. The other thing that's very, very critical is to get a good in-depth understanding of what rates are. First choice, second choice, third party. How can we secure rates and be competitive with the industrial markets? And that is very, very critical to us in securing companies to come to Columbia County. We've not been able to get rates in the past that made any sense to the county. We've lost projects because the city has not been in an industrial rate mode in the past. You've not dealt with industrial rates, or you've not been able to provide industrial rates to us.
And that goes right back to what I was just discussing.
Okay.
We can't provide those rates until we have that known volume of gas, and we've been basing this on, I've got several projects here. I got one in here that where they're requesting 500 PSI. 500, I mean, 900 is on the main line, so.
We understand that that was an 500 PSI. We know that.
We have all that documentation in here, so that's kind of where we're at with it. If you would like for me to share these feasibility studies, Mr. Dial, I believe you may have some of them. If not, I can forward you everything. But we have a lot of this work already done.
So we're on this, Glenn, on this feasibility study you're alluding to, it's gonna give you a rate feasibility. I mean, explain that a little bit more in detail. They're gonna bring us back competitive.
They're gonna give us,
rate.
we're gonna be able to get information on what national rates are, what companies are utilizing, of large volume users, what's available on that line, what's transported through that line, if there are capacities that can be tapped into, are there contracts that can be gotten from that? We may not be able to be in that business, but at least we will know, and we'll put this one to bed for once and for all. And also they will literally go through the south end of the county. They'll take a look at the city. They'll take a look at all of it. And they'll tell us exactly what's out here so we'll fully understand so we can make an educated decision going forward. That's what it's all about.
Well, I think on the gas side of it, and I got to say this for the simple reason I was invited to that meeting, myself and David, and I learned a lot that day. And since then, this gas thing, it's Peoples brought it up as far as possibly, and I'm not speaking for Peoples, but being a transmission entity for us, that would be a big deal. You got to buy gas from Peoples straight out because they're buying it from the same people Steve is. It puts you in a totally different entity. But at the end of the day, when I'm talking to the head man of natural gas, brings the gas in the state of Florida, it's like he said, to bring gas, he said feasibilities, he said it's all well and good. He said it gives you a good understanding relevant to what's possible. He said, but he said, you're here. And he says, and the real answer is way up here, because the PSC wouldn't even allow us to bring gases in from different areas, regardless of what we want to pay for. That's exactly what he's told us. And I'm like, well, regardless of what you want to pay for, that didn't make no sense to me. But as I went on and understood how the PSC actually directs the gas industry, you just don't go saying, I'm going to knock a hole in somebody's line. It's got to be about, and as he said, it would never happen in this lifetime. They're not going to allow that to happen. And so I get it on and now Glenn, is this feasibility going to cover us on water and sewage also?
This is just on gas.
Just on gas?
That's correct.
All right. And this grant come from
Department of Economic Opportunity.
EFI?
EFI, the same.
And the grant's already been filed for, correct?
We will have notice this afternoon of the award.
We did get notice, you say?
We're supposed to get an award this afternoon.
Okay.
I'm hopeful it'll give us an updated number on the cost and maybe some ideas on how we can finance it.
Well, like I say, I've got a lot of these numbers. We've done this through Florida Gas Utility. If any of these numbers will help, before we spend all that money.
But like you said, right now in this market, with the prices of materials,
So we run a
it's
lot.
hard to predict.
The construction, the price of material is gonna be really hard to predict as far as it, being a volatile market right now. As far as marketing rates, that's something that we all do. We could probably get pretty close. If you had the volume of the customer, you could probably get that pretty close. I mean, and when I say that, the brokers that we deal with in our area, which are the same people that everybody have to talk to, we're actually a member of them, so they do that for us. If we were to go in there and give them, one of the things that we've always had, the hurdle is how much gas are we gonna need? How much delivery pressure are you gonna need? What's the size and capacity? That's always been a hurdle. So if somebody comes in and does a feasibility study, it's really nothing more than what I've got here. That transmission line's not gonna move. You know that's where they got to tap. It's not going anywhere. It's been there for years. So we know where we're gonna tie in and we know where we got to go. I don't care if you run the feasibility study. I'm just offering what we've already done.
Well, I would love for the city to participate.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think that we will, once we have these, these talks, but just to know, to clear the air, that as far as the gas goes, we want to be in the gas business. We want to be the provider.
Glad to hear that.
That's what our intent is. And and like I say, I've got dates all the way back to 2017 and I didn't even pull the email records. This is just what I had in the file that I pulled out where we've tried to supply this, but it's going to come 1 to 2 options. You're either going to feed both what we've got out there, which right now we know from an engineering standpoint could be 1,200 decks a day, or we're going to run this hypersonic. Those are the 2 options. I mean, we know where we're at. So if there's anything that I can do to put together, just let me know.
And if Peoples comes back and offers us up, when I say us, the city, a transmission rate, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
That's
That's what we call a sweetheart deal. You want to lock that in, and if they'll let me do that right to refuse, then it goes to our attorneys and everything gets paperwork written, and it basically says that when you go out there, for a fact, I got this much gas at this much price. There's no question.
That way, when economic needs, they know that number up front.
They know it up front. We'll negotiate that as soon as they give us the approval to pull that 1,200 off the pipeline. The gas is in the pipe. We just got approval we got to get that approval. And once we get that, we'll have that rate and everything will be structured. And then if it goes into anything outside of the transmission rate in the gas industry, a lot of times it goes into their rate study and it'll go into a rate what they pay each month. So that's a variable. There's a couple of different options.
Well, the best position the utility could be in is these typical industrial users are 24/7, 365. So they don't turn off. Very simple. And that's exactly what you really want as a user. I mean, to supply to.
Yeah, bigger's better. You just got to remember everything that goes with that. And what you got to also remember when we go transmission distribution, it's a totally different world. The city of Lake City is certified, we're qualified, we're OQ qualified to be a distribution. So if it gets up into that transmission range, the city's we don't even have the authority to go in and work to tap those pipelines. So then we got to look at personnel. We got to look at all of those costs as far as, what it's going to take us to get to that next level.
Do you have the personnel at that level? You don't have the personnel either, do you?
No, so we've got hurdles within the city, but as far as the actual gas consumption, it's got to come from one of the 2. SONAT, Florida Gas Transmission. I mean, those are all pretty much our go-tos. But anyway, like I said, let me know.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we were awarded the grant for the wastewater improvements phase 1, the 1.4 million on 4775. You have anything else on that?
No, with Jamie's help, with Jones Edmond, we submitted the 1.4 million, a little bit over, and the one for the 475, and also the one for the 1 million for rehab and pipeline, and that one is out. What the 1.4 million does for us is, you all know, in discussions in the past, with the prices of everything going up, when we bid out 4775, it came in quite a bit over bid. And the city was actually in a shortfall of being able to, with the grants that we had, because we only had 2.7 million in grants, and the bid come out around 3.4 million. So what this grant awarded does is forward, it covers that shortfall of that grant plus a little bit extra to put in to cover additional material and stuff like that. So now 4775 is completely covered as far as cost. There will be no cost to the city. It's all grant funded at this point. And what the 475,000 does for the RV park, we submitted that as well. It takes off, anyone's familiar with the area right there around Casey Jones and all right here around 47. It'll take all that RV park, finally put them on sewer, be able to eliminate all those septic tanks and stuff they have in there and allow for the future expansion. This will also allow for additional capacity and lines to be run out through the windswept area and through in there.
Paul, in this project here, does the motel come off of it?
The motel can come off of that as well, because the way it's gonna be designed, when we put the stations and stuff at the back of the campground there, they'll be able to run down and tie into that as well, if that's their desire to get off. And in the past, we've had conversations with them where they were feasible to want to get on city sewer.
Cause that system, that sand thing, I know you've had to call just like everybody else has had on the smells of it and everything, but Paul, on that system there, is that an annual DEP inspection / whatever? Do they have to operate under
Like
DEP?
that, or, you know, regulated by DEP.
I got you. And I'm sure DEP would be tickled to death to get something like that.
Yeah, even one septic tank, they're tickled about.
Cause I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I know there was a time there was a lawsuit developing out of that,
Mhm.
adjoining neighbors.
Mhm.
Just here recently.
The 1 million grant, you know, we just submitted it. We haven't heard back from that one. And that one's basically just to help us with our infrastructure to do some slip lining and, which has been alluded to. You know, the city has a lot of old system, a lot of old manholes, a lot of old lines. And we try as much as we can to get as much grant money as we can to be able to help replace those, to cut down on, you know, the leakage and stuff like that. So that's what that grant's for.
All right, and then the wetlands extension.
Yes, what that is, with all the new rules and stuff that's coming out with DEP, the different, which everybody knows, DEP changes their rules and regulations quite often. And between the plants that we have, we were looking at taking the wetlands and doing something, maybe extending them out. And we have to come here today. If you wouldn't mind, he has a short presentation for Wetland Solutions. They do all of our engineering and environmental studies and everything for the wetlands and stuff that we have. Works real close with Cody, who happens to be out, you know, for a spell. But Chris was gracious enough to come and kind of give us a little update on what the future, or what we hope will be the future of what we're looking at as far as our wetlands and stuff.
Thanks, Paul. Mr. Chairman. Just a couple slides to go through kind of the history of the wetland project. If you could flip through to the next one, please. It's just a nice cover shot there of the original project. As many of you probably know, some years back, the city developed a recharge wetland project. You see that in the photos at the bottom there, where one of the 3 existing wastewater spray fields was converted into a groundwater recharge wetland. So that effluent is still treated in the St. Margaret's and Kicklighter plants, goes through the holding lagoon at the north end of the spray field facility, and is then pumped out either to the 2 spray fields or to the wetland. The wetland provides additional nutrient removal, and then that water that is applied recharges the aquifer. That project was initially proposed back in 2006. It kind of sat around for a little while and then gained some momentum when the DEP Springs funding program really kicked off around 2012 or 13. Swanee River District picked this project up, put that into the funding pipeline. That was successfully awarded by DEP. And then the city, in collaboration with the Water Management District, went through the bid process for that. Design and permitting was completed in 2015, construction completed in early 17, and has been operational since. Next slide, please. So that existing project has been really successful in enhancing the level of wastewater treatment that the city's been able to provide. It's reduced total nitrogen concentrations coming out of the two wastewater plants from an average of about 6.9 milligrams per liter to 1.9 over the course of its operational history between about early 2017 and present. That's an additional 123,500 pounds of nitrogen that's been removed before that water infiltrates back into the aquifer and helps sustain spring flows. It's also removed 26,300 pounds of phosphorus, recharged about 3 billion gallons of water. And what's important to note there is that because we're increasing recharge efficiency by taking spray heads out, having less evaporation of water that's applied to the land surface and concentrating that in the wetland, there's actually been a net increase in recharge to the aquifer and the spring system as a result of this first project of about 500,000 gallons per day. Next slide. So why consider an expansion? There's a number of things, as Mr. Dial mentioned just a moment ago, rules changing and things that are really driving where the city needs to go with respect to reclaimed water treatment and management. The primary driver here is that the entire spray field area, the wastewater plants, much of the city lies within the Ichetucknee primary focus area. And that falls under the Santa Fe River Basin Management Action Plan, which requires all wastewater treatment facilities over a certain size, which is very small, I think it's 20,000 gallons a day, have to achieve a total nitrogen concentration of 3 milligrams per liter before any of that reclaimed water can be applied through public access reuse or any type of land application. Every utility that has had permits come up for renewal, now that the BMAPs are finalized, are coming with administrative orders, and the city's not an exception from that. They have their own. It's AO 227, and that's DEP's letter that comes on top of the permit and says, you're in the BMAP, you will do this, and there's a timetable associated with that, which I'll show you in another slide. And of course, as much of the discussion today has gone on, you've been talking about growth and trying to really facilitate expansion of services in the city, and this kind of plays into that as well. So next slide. So here is a clip out of the administrative order. And what that requires for the city, for the utility department, is to have a plan of action submitted by March 1st of this year of how they're going to achieve total nitrogen of 3 milligrams per liter coming from both wastewater plants before any kind of reuse of that water. The city is moving ahead with developing those plans. There will be AWT upgrade studies and things going on that feed into that document. But this is the kind of the compliance timeline. That plan has to be implemented by September 1st. So you've got to be showing that you're taking steps to move towards ultimate compliance by September 2025. Next slide. So where that brings us is really to consider an expansion of the existing wetland project onto first one and then potentially the other remaining spray field that the city currently owns and operates. This is the Steedley Field. This is located on the west side of Sisters Welcome Road. The converted wetland site is just off to the right of the image there now. Converting Steedley to another recharge wetland project would reduce total nitrogen loads by another 5,000 pounds per year. It would increase recharge by about just short of 250,000 gallons a year. And this is likely to play out, as I mentioned, these other studies will be going on as a very cost-effective alternative to doing advanced waste treatment upgrades at both facilities. And another thing that's important to note here is that this can be designed, constructed, and in operation to be in compliance with the BMAP or the administrative order deadline of September 2025. So next slide. We would have had this discussion in an earlier meeting, but those meetings got postponed until today. We went ahead on the city's behalf with approval from Cody and from Mr. Dial to go ahead and submit this project into the funding portal through the Swanee River Water Management District and see how that comes out. So this is essentially the timeline of activities and the budget associated with each task that has been requested for state funding. So that submittal went in on December 15th. We would propose that design would start upon receipt of that grant funding, assuming that it ranks well, which both the city's current project as well as other utilities in north central Florida that have submitted recharge wetland projects and spray field conversions, they've all been ranked very well. Not a single one has been turned down by DEP yet. So we're very optimistic that this will go forward as well. But funding would be available next fiscal year, move right into selection of a design firm, going through the design and construction or design and permitting processes through 2023, jump right into construction bidding in early 2024. And we've estimated about an 18-month timeline for construction. It can probably be done more efficiently than that, and certainly have that system up and running by September 2025, so that all of the flow that is sent to the current wetland site, as well as to the Steedley field, are then fully compliant with the terms of the BMAP and the administrative order. So with that, I'll offer to take any questions or take my seat.
How many acre expansion would that be?
This roughly laid out right now, it's about a 53. Steedley is around 75 acres or so, but there are some setbacks. There's a fiber optic line that runs through the site that we need to avoid. There are other setbacks required from the parcel lines to protect adjacent property owners and their uses and interests. So it ends up being a net of about 53 additional acres of wetlands.
How big y'all is that right now, Paul?
It's 120. And then ultimately there's the South Spray Field, which would probably shake out to be about another 85 or 90 if it were also considered for conversion.
Anyone else have questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we just wanted, just wanted to bring this before the committee because, like I said, it is a major project and it's in the county and it will affect, as you know, we did the last time, you know, we had a little bit of issue with residents and stuff around it. But we just wanted to make sure that it was out there, people understood the reasoning behind why we're doing it and the benefits, you know, versus, you know, trying to upgrade the two plants that we have to waste advanced treatment, that this is a cheaper and actually be a better option in the long run.
This gonna help you with your consultant use permits too?
We hope it will, in our talks with Swanee River, to see how they view it. Basically, since we didn't get that much from the previous wetland, because basically they look at it like it was already being used as a spray field, and it was already having the water dumped on it. So basically, they kind of look at it the same way. But it's based on, you know, the E plus what we can get back at
it. Anyone else? All right. Any other comments before we wrap up?
I don't have any trouble.
Anything? Okay. All right. I would adjourn the meeting.